Hey guys, this is Samuel the Geek, and today I'm going to be talking about SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated for Windows. Full, full disclosure, THQ Nordic did provide me a code of this game on Steam so that I could review, talk about, and stream it. And some of you came to my streams and saw it. Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated is a painstakingly recreated version of the game that was released on the PlayStation 2, the Xbox, and the Nintendo GameCube. This is the first time that PC gamers have gotten to experience the game. When the game originally came out on PC, it was an entirely different game. It wasn't the platformer that the consoles got, but a puzzle, like WarioWare kind of style game instead. So this is the first time that PC gamers will actually get to play this game. Now, out the gate, it's a really interesting game. I never played the original. It is a Super Mario 64 style game where it is a 3D platformer with a overworld, and then you go into the specialized worlds, and the world remains constant, but you go around and you complete tasks to earn golden spatulas, which are the equivalent of the stars of Super Mario 64 if you played that game. And the goal of the game is to collect as many spatulas as possible to progress through the story. Each portion of the story has a limited number of spatulas that you need to collect in order to unlock the boss battle that lets you progress. And there's also extra spatulas that you can collect to try to complete the game. This game is really well made. It has a reputation for being the best made franchise game of that time period. In case you don't know, at that time, many of the games that came out that used properties, like especially properties aimed at children, were not very good. They were often quick cash grabs where a developer would make a video game that was somewhat playable, put it out there, and skin it with a license to try to get as much money out of that license as possible. This game, though, was not one of those games. It was a well-made video game to capitalize on the popularity of Spongebob. Spongebob was a Nickelodeon show that at the time period came out just a couple of years prior, I believe, and it was one of the largest television shows of my childhood. It came out just when I was entering like in first grade, and at this time period, it was at the peak of its popularity. The most, what's considered the most high quality seasons were out at this time period. So it was a very well produced show aimed at all audiences, and this game can be played by all audiences as well. It's not aimed at children. Some parts of the game can be quite challenging, and it doesn't really hold your hand too much after the initial tutorial. In fact, I'm so used to modern games holding my hand, I got stuck on a couple of the levels, as some of you painstakingly laughed at me for several minutes of me struggling trying to figure out exactly what I had to do in the game when I was playing it on stream. I did beat the game. I did run into a couple of errors throughout the game. There are parts of the game that it definitely needs some patches. I do not know if these are PC specific, but there are parts of the game that need some patches. I often found myself bugging out into areas where I basically had to reset the level by killing myself in the game because uh, I would get stuck in between environments and edges. I also had a weird error with the game where it did not detect one of my golden spatulas, and I had to earn an extra golden spatula in order to beat the game. And what was so weird is that the Steam achievements knew how many golden spatulas I have. So I earned the achievement, but it wasn't documented in the game. So it didn't count it in the game, but it counted it in the Steam achievement. I don't know. It's very bizarre. It didn't count that golden spatula, and thus I'll probably never be able to 100% that save, which is very unfortunate. Um, I would have to basically restart the game from scratch if I wanted to do a complete run, which stinks because I tried to earn a lot of golden spatulas so that I could 100% the game because I did enjoy it. But I don't feel like playing through it again because of that. And honestly, the replay value can be a little rough. While Super Mario 64 is infinitely replayable, a lot of the levels in this game, I feel like a second time through would be a little bit of a slog. Once you figure out the puzzles, they're kind of easy, but the first time around, it can definitely be a little challenging. So what I will say is that the game is decently long. It's about 10 hours. I would peg it like at an average around 10 hours. I would say that the challenge is pretty, it's moderate. It's not a hard game. You will be able to go through on your first try fairly easily. There are parts of it that you can get stuck in, but the game is very forgiving in its checkpoints, and it's very forgiving, because it's aimed at children. So it's for the most part it's aimed at children. Adults can play this game and get a little bit of a challenge, but it's not aimed at adults. So it's pretty forgiving. The story is nothing to write home about. Obviously, it does play out like an episode of SpongeBob, but a pretty decent episode of SpongeBob. Not some of the crap that came out, the newer stuff. It has a level of quality of writing similar to those early seasons, and I will say that one aspect of that is a bit annoying is that you don't have all of the original voice actors, but you have most of them. For instance, you don't have Mr. Krabs and you don't have Mermaid Man, and it just sticks out like a sore thumb. The voice actors that they hired to replace them don't sound that much like the original voice actors, and it's just it kind of, I don't know, it takes you out of the moment a little bit. I understand that they basically were told by Nickelodeon that they had to use all the original audio, and they probably didn't want to get people to re-record. And I do think one of those actors has actually unfortunately passed away. So what can you do? There's not much you could do there. So what I will say is that it's an overall extremely charming game. It's very well made. It's been modernized. It looks good. It looks really good. I would say that it's up there in terms of looks. I think most PCs should be able to run it well, and I will say that the controller support is really awesome too. It integrates fully with the Steam controller support. You are going to want to play with the controller. I tried to play with mouse and keyboard for a little bit. It didn't feel good at all. It's not designed for it. So if you don't have an Xbox One controller, or if you can use a Nintendo Switch or PS4 controller if you have Steam. I don't know if you could purchase this outside of Steam, which is something I probably should have asked the developer, but I was given a Steam key, so I'm only reviewing the Steam version of it. But I will say that it worked with my Nintendo Switch controller, so that's what I use primarily to play the game. But no matter what controller you do use, it's going to use the Xbox One interface. I don't know that about the PS4, but if you use a Nintendo Switch controller, you will see the Xbox One interface of buttons. And even if you have it set to the Nintendo Switch interface on Steam, it'll still show the buttons for Xbox 360 in the way that they they are integrated. So, for instance, if you use A on this and you have it set to the Nintendo Switch controller, it'll still be in the same placement. But if you have it set to the Xbox 360 buttons, it'll be B will be A will be B, X will be Y, and and X will be Y, and Y will be X. So keep that in mind. You may want to just double check your settings if you're using a Nintendo Switch controller. I'm sure if you're using a PlayStation controller, I don't know if it switches the buttons, but if it doesn't, um, X will be A, B will be circle, triangle will be Y, and square will be X. So it uses the Xbox One or Xbox 360. Well, it has the Xbox One interface. So the Xbox One controllers is the default standard for how they programmed it for PC. I will say that you know my only issues with the game is that the multiplayer, it was touted like as this big feature. Um, it seems a little tacked on. I didn't enjoy it very much, and that was like the major new revision that they were bringing to the game, and they were going to revive some lost levels, and those lost levels were instead integrated into the multiplayer. And I don't know. I feel like you're not playing this game for the multiplayer. It's basically like a horde mode, but for combating the enemies. And while the combat in this game is interesting for the platformer, I don't feel that the combat on its own is the strength of the game. I feel the setting is the strength of the game, the nostalgia, just the overall presentation is more the strength of the game than the actual gameplay. If you like SpongeBob, if you grew up with SpongeBob, this will be an amazing, interesting nostalgia trip. If you aren't familiar, if you don't like the property, you're probably not going to be that impressed by the game. The game is a decent Super Mario 64, um, you know, kind of rip-off game, similar game, but it's not that standout on its own. You really need to be invested into the characters. So if you're a SpongeBob fan, I think you'll love this game. I think it's very reminiscent of early SpongeBob. It's very true to the universe and the character. It's obviously crafted with love and care to cater to the fans of that series. And even though I was never the biggest fan of that series growing up, I do have a lot of nostalgia for it. It was definitely a part of my culture growing up, you know what I mean? Yeah, and it did give me a lot of warm, fuzzy memories of the show. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. Uh, for $30, I would say that it wouldn't be the first thing I bought for $30 on Steam, but it would definitely be a fun time, and I would not have regretted spending $30 on it. So I would say this game gets an 8 out of 10. It's a high quality, game that will that fans of the series will definitely enjoy. Uh, but it's not a spectacular game. It's not, it's not anything groundbreaking or innovative. But I think that if you like SpongeBob and you like platformers, this is definitely the best experience that you will have. I don't think there will be a better platforming SpongeBob game that you can find out there, and this is definitely something that you will enjoy. Anyway, Samuel out.